Hello and welcome to InThisCornerTV.com. I'm James Smith, back in one piece in Las Vegas following a fantastic week at the International Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York. Well, the stench is still in the air with the very controversial split decision win by Tim Bradley over Manny Pacquiao. We're outside the building. We're inside is the Nevada State Athletic Commission. We figured we'd go right to the source, the executive director, Keith Kizer, who talks about this past Saturday night. First off, Keith, I want to ask you about the delays in the Pacquiao-Bradley fight. First off, Game 7 between the Heat and the Celtics. Explain, how did that all take place? Was it because there's been all kinds of different reports flying around? Even the broadcast itself, it was like the announcers put it on Manny Pacquiao.
Well, the concern or the problem was that HBO and Top Rank did not want to start the main event until Game 7 was over. And unfortunately with basketball, you don't know when that'll be. Even if it doesn't go to overtime, the game may last a lot longer or go a lot shorter than people had planned. And there's always the option, of course, they could go to several periods of overtime. So my understanding is because of that, Manny Pacquiao did not want to start his warm-up, and then the game goes in overtime, and he's peaked too soon. So he wanted to wait until he was certain of knowing when the game was going to end. Of course, you have to wait in a game like that to pretty much the end of the fourth quarter to do that, to make sure that, again, there wouldn't be any type of overtime. And then he started his normal routine to warm up for the fight, kind of akin to what he'd been doing in practice and sparring throughout the past few months. And it just takes a while sometimes. He has a different routine than some other fighters. But, he's fought here, I think, 10 other times. We never had any issues with delay. So I would not put that on Pacquiao. I put that on HBO and Top Rank, though I think it's fair for them to say, look, we don't want to cheat the sports fan out of Game 7 and the Pacquiao-Bradley fight. So I don't fault HBO or Top Rank for doing that. But obviously you can't fault the boxers for not wanting to they have their pre-fight warm-up confused or messed up either when they're going for such a big title.
Was Bradley aware of all this? Was he on the same page? It just appeared to me that he was maybe perhaps warming up too early. And
well, I think his warm-up routine is much quicker or shorter than Manny's was. But whether or not he was a better guesser than Manny and when the game was probably going to end, or maybe he thought there was no chance the Celtics had, so it wouldn't go in overtime, I don't know.
When the decision was announced after the fight and you heard the winner was Tim Bradley, what went through your mind?
Nothing different than normal. I mean, it was a close fight, so it didn't surprise me that you might have some close scores. I thought Pacquiao had got to a very quick and big lead early on in the fight, but then near the end, I think later found out because of issues with his calf, he kind of got flat-footed, and Bradley was able to take a lot of those later rounds. So it didn't surprise me, but nonetheless, I'm not surprised by the fact that a lot of fans thought that Pacquiao won the fight and were unhappy with the decision.
There is 4 criteria to score a fight, and in this one, Bradley, and again, I picked him to win the fight, didn't win any of the 4 criteria. Okay. I mean, with all the backlash, what will you do about it? I mean, there's been because really accountability, credibility, our sport is in a real difficult situation. And, unlike HBO, ESPN, or Showtime, for example, a show like ours is sponsored. And you go to a sponsor right now, and you mention the sport of boxing, and it has a stench to it. And these type of decisions, and on the heels of Abril and Rios, which was another horrible decision with nearly everybody. Maybe there were some guys who had Rios winning the fight, but on the heels of that, something has to be done. And it falls on you and the athletic commission. So how do you address that?
Well, I think in any case, whether there's controversy or not, the officials need to be accountable. They need to explain why they made the rulings they did, or maybe didn't make the rulings that they didn't make. In the case of a referee, for example, not stopping a fight or not calling a knockdown. And I know in Nevada, they're all very accountable. They're more than happy to explain why they made the decisions they made. I talked to these judges right after the fight, and they explained what they did. I'm also going to have them come in, and they want to do this. Again, they're not looking to not explain themselves. Come in, watch the fight, away from the sights and sounds of the MGM Grand, with the luxury of DVD technology, and watch it. I haven't got the DVD yet, but hopefully we'll gain this shortly. And then have them come in individually. So that they judge it alone. They should be reviewing it alone as well. Every judge is an island during the fight. So have that situation, and I don't know of any official that I've ever worked with who is unwilling to do that.
We're in tough economic times, so maybe it's difficult the hiring process. I don't know what it is with the Nevada State Athletic Commission, but with everybody, age can be a situation with the ages of some of these judges, and obviously they've been around a long time and have called hundreds and in some cases thousands of fights. So they have the head, but perhaps they don't have the eye or the reflexes or something anymore. Does it concern you personally that maybe some of these guys, with a couple of the judges, we had 145 years in age, does it concern you perhaps they could be slowing down and don't need to be suspended or put out of the sport, but maybe replaced by younger judges?
Well, no, not with age. That's, I think, very unfair. But it is true that there comes a time pretty much in everyone's career as an official that it's time to hang them up. And that has occurred several times during my tenure with judges and with referees, for that matter. So that may be the case. But just to say it based on age is not fair. And it's especially not fair when these three judges were appointed, everybody, every media member I know of, the promoter, the camps, the sanctioning body, all were very pleased that we picked three very experienced officials.
Although Harold Letterman had a problem prior to or during the broadcast, I think, with C.J. Ross. It was difficult for me to hear, but he had some.
My understanding is he was pushing his daughter, Julie, and perhaps.
It's always something in boxing.
Jim Lampley had told me that he was very disappointed. He said in Harold that he was using his pulpit to try to help out his family member, and I think Jim's comment was it didn't serve him very well doing that, and I agreed with Jim. I don't think it serves Julie either, and she's a hell of a judge. So that was unfortunate by Harold to do that, but he's got the right to speak his mind even in those circumstances. But again, the everyone else that I know of, there was arguments with the Williams-Lara fight that those judges weren't experienced enough. They hadn't done enough world title fights, in fights of that magnitude or above, which of course this was, that there should be experienced judges. So you have three great experienced judges that everybody's happy with, and then afterwards they try to raise, well, maybe they're too experiencst. So it was very silly, and again, dishonest criticism. Again, I don't mind criticism. I mind dishonest criticism, and it's unfortunate that's occurred. We will not be discriminating against people due to age, and I resent anyone who asks us to do so. Under our purview, under our statutes, our regulations, this is the way to handle it. The commission has no ability, nor any commission I know of, to overturn a decision just because people disagree with the scoring. The judges' decisions are final. Their scores are final. That's just the way the law is everywhere that I know of. As far as dealing with the officials, again, in this situation, you had three highly trained, highly experienced, highly competent judges. Whether you think they blew it that night or not doesn't change the fact that everyone realizes that. In fact, like I said, before the fight, the fighters' camps, the promoter, the sanctioning body, all the journalists I spoke with were very pleased to have that, and in fact kind of contrasted that with the other fight by saying it's good that Keith, we know you'd put in three very experienced, competent judges, and you have. Of course, when there's a split decision, there's always going to be one side, if not both sides, unhappy with the decision, and the fans of the losing side be unhappy. That doesn't mean their criticisms are invalid just because they're expected, but it does show the fact that the process that we've used didn't vary, didn't change, and is something that I don't think the process itself is broken in any means.
I'll give you a perception that's out there, and I'll let you address it. And I've read it on several occasions today, and it's that, Keith Kizer's a great guy, nice guy, but he and the Nevada State Athletic Commission simply are not doing their job.
Okay. Well, again, people have the right to criticize. I think that's fair. I would never want to stomp on anyone's rights to criticize, especially the government. We all have the right to criticize the government, even if we're incorrect. We should have the right to do so. Again, the only thing that bothers me is the dishonesty that's sometimes involved. Most of the comments and calls I've gotten, some, by the way, in favor of Bradley, but most in favor of Pacquiao, most of those have been very fair, very honest criticisms based on their people's opinions, and I appreciate anyone who took the time to do that. Shows their passion for the sport, and I appreciate that. So if people want to criticize us, that's fine. I'd prefer constructive criticism. I've gotten some of those over the years where people said, look, you should do it this way or that way, and whether I agree with them or not, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I, again, appreciate them taking the time out of their daily lives to give me advice. I mean, constructive criticism is nothing more than free advice, and no one should be bothered by that.
What is the process for hiring new judges and the judges that are in place? What is their timetable? How does that all work?
Certainly. Every application that's granted is for the calendar year. So everyone has to reapply at the end of the calendar year, be them a judge or a ref, just like a boxer or just like a promoter. New judges basically come in one of two ways. They've either had stellar careers elsewhere, and I might bring them in for one fight, like I did Pat Russell and Jack Reeves from California. They worked the two of the title fights on June 9th. Jesse Reyes from Texas worked the Alvarez-Mosley fight on May 5th. Tom Miller from Ohio is working the Khan Garcia fight on July 14th. And they've had great reputations, done great in other jurisdictions, and you bring them in for that. Sometimes judges like that move here, and there might be a situation to add them to the regular role of officials, where they'll be doing undercard fights and as well as main events and title fights, if appropriate. But the more commonplace for being a regular judge here, based out of here, is you go and you do the amateurs. You do it for years. No different than probably how NFL umpires and referees do their deal, and Major League Baseball umpires and NBA referees. You know, their first officiating isn't in the major leagues. So you go to the amateurs. You work it for years. If it looks like the commission wants to add a new official, I'll get with the USA Boxing. I'll find out who perhaps the top 2 or 3 officials are in that category, be it timekeeper or referee or judge. I'll interview them. If it's a judge or a timekeeper, I may have them kind of shadow judge or sit with the timekeepers during the fight and see how they do skill-wise, but also see how they do professionally, how they carry themselves, or not doing anything inappropriate, asking for autographs, trying to sneak people in the fights, any of that stuff, any type of fandom. They're there to work and be neutral officials. And then, assuming that they are able to do that, successfully shadow and carry themselves well, then the commission might add them to the roles. And they'd start, of course, doing undercard fights in smaller venues for quite a while until they can prove that they're entitled to go to the next level. And that's worked well over the years here. I mean, I think it's very important to have that background, that amateur background, just like it is for a fighter. So if there's anyone out there who's interested in being a ref or a judge or a timekeeper someday, get with your local amateur group and start working and shadowing down there and training down there. And sometimes people try it out. They don't like it. It's not what they thought it would be, or they realize they're not good at it. So it's good to get that out of the way, too. So I know the amateurs are always looking for people to get involved. In a situation where judges and referees have no longer had the level of competency required, and they've not been used going forward. That's happened several times over my tenure, 6 years as executive director. I view very carefully their body of work, especially their recent body of work, be it a 4-round fight or a 12-round fight. So that affects where they kind of fall in the pecking order. It affects whether I'll bring somebody back from out of state to work fights that maybe I've brought in the past, but don't think they no longer have that level that they used to have, and maybe I won't bring them back here to work fights, or I won't renew a judge's license from Nevada at the end of the year because he or she was at one time a very good official, but just for whatever reason they no longer are there. And you try to work with them. Experience is very important in the role of an official, regardless of what sport you're talking about. Experience is probably the biggest part, along with ethics. So you don't want to just cut somebody loose because they had one bad day or even a few bad days, but you'll probably move them down the card, or you may give them some time off and see if they can get back to where they were and where they should be. A lot of times that does work, but in the times it doesn't work, they've done their last fight in Nevada and they need to move on and do something else.
I remember doing a piece years ago with Mark Ratner about my overall thoughts on how boxing should be handled, and I remember the closing right out in front of this building where I said, boxing can handle itself, boxing can regulate itself, boxing can take care of itself, and I no longer feel that way about the sport. I think right now, and I'm not so sure with all the problems we have in the country how we'd have a national commission, but perhaps a commissioner, a Roger Goodell, a Peter Uberoff, that people, like you, who are doing their job or to the best of their ability, and perhaps their hands are tied on certain things, are able to have somebody oversee the whole thing, at least in this country. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I really have a position one or the other. I can tell you the federal law that's been passed over the years, the Professional Boxing Safety Act, the Ali Act, were great laws. And we're very supportive of them and appreciate that they're in play now, and they've helped us and helped other commissions over those years. What the federal government wants to do going forward is a call for them to make. I don't know what would have been different here unless the National Commission says use inexperienced judges in world title fights, which I can't imagine them saying. There would have been no difference here had there been a National Commission. In fact, the National Commission probably would have given us much support for having three very experienced judges and a very experienced referee do this fight. So I'm not sure what effect that would have. And in fact, Senator McCain, Senator Reid, and others who've pushed for this bill over the years have said if there is a national commission, they basically should model their regulations and rules on the state of Nevada's commission. So I appreciate that faith the federal government has given, and in fact they have used our model as their model with the acts that have passed. But I have no issue one way or the other with them pursuing additional federal legislation, and if it happens, we're willing to work with them 100%.
Don't you think with public perception it would help? The fact that there would be again, after something like this takes place, that there would be the final authority, somebody that has absolutely nothing to do with the damn sport in any capacity, and again, perhaps a businessman, or somebody like a Uberoff or Goodell who've gotten those positions and done a great job. I just think in terms of public perception, it would really help our sport right now that is just being bombasted in the media. We're in a time now, Keith, it's not like it was before with all the media, with all the social media. We're in a different period of time, and accountability and credibility is just, in my opinion, paramount for this sport to come back into the mainstream like it used to be.
Well, I don't know of any governing body in any sport, be it the NFL, Major League Baseball, the Olympic Committee, that hasn't received criticism for decisions they've made. So I don't think there's any kind of magic position that's going to be free of criticism, nor do I think there should be. Everybody should have the right to criticize the governing bodies, be they private or public, be they run by certain individuals or not. I think it's very important. So I'm not sure how you'd ever be able to set something up that would, any body you could set up that would make decisions that no one would ever disagree with. I just think that's an impossibility.
So I just want to give you time to, address the boxing fans yourself, right into the camera there, and just talk to the fans about your position on this past week in boxing, Pacquiao and Bradley.
Well, again, the fans, I appreciate their passion. I think Bradley and Pacquiao would appreciate that they have such great fans. The sport has such great fans, and I hope that somehow that both these gentlemen are able to move on with their careers, whether they fight again or not, and can keep those fans and keep moving forward.
This certainly hasn't been the easiest week or year, but we appreciate, Keith, your time and you stepping up to the plate and answering the questions on In This Corner.
Well, I appreciate that. It has definitely been one strange spring, but I look forward to a very exciting summer and fall here as well.
Well, going into this fight, as you know, I picked Tim Bradley to win the fight. It was clearly evident to me after the first 3 or 4 rounds that he wasn't going to. I scored it 118 to 110 for Manny Pacquiao. Obviously, we found out that there was a pretty serious injuries suffered by Bradley, and that I think affected his performance, as did perhaps all the delays before he entered inside the ring. But once he got in there, clearly, Manny Pacquiao dominated the action and should have been awarded the decision. Sometimes when you go to the and sit by the sea, you inhale the fresh air, fresh ocean air. sometimes you go sit by the sea and you inhale, it's nothing but, it smells like bad fish. And that, I think, is the case with this fight. There's a stench in the air, and we felt that we had to come here and address it with Keith Kizer. I think it is critical right now that boxing steps up to the plate. Forget about the integrity of the sport. That's already gone. For the sport to even salvage itself in the mainstream, something has to be done, because right now, boxing with the public, it's like a bad marriage. As much as you love that person, and as much passion as you had for that person, as much love and passion as we all have had for boxing, there appears to be irreconcilable differences, and the sport better examine itself. For InThisCornerTV.com, I'm James Smith.